Once a month, Paula Pant, host of the Afford Anything podcast, answers voicemail questions the listeners send in. Here's one now.
Hey Paula, this is Daniel. I'm from the southeast part of the United States. I had a question about initially screening for homes. I often look on Zillow just because it's easy. People are always posting things on there and it's fun for me to check things out. But I realize that because it is so easy, so many people are looking on there, that these are probably not the best deals. It's probably some of the worst actually because it is so competitive. So I was wondering what perhaps are some good websites to use or other sources to use just for initially screening homes to find maybe a list of some that could be interesting from an investment perspective. And secondly, I wanted to ask about, if I see something online that's say a $70,000 duplex that is currently renting gross rent for $1,200 a month. Obviously, that on its face seems like a great investment because it's far past the 1% rule. However, if it's a duplex, I assume it's probably owned by an investor. And if it's an investor, they're probably savvy and realize that something is wrong with the home. That's what I would assume. And I was wondering what your take is on that and maybe what are some of the best ways to figure out if something is perhaps wrong from a home from first look or from further inspection or whatever. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, Daniel. All right, so you've got two questions. I'm going to start with the first one, which is, where do you look for properties? First of all, you are correct. Zillow is the worst place to look. The thing is, unfortunately, a lot of people turn to Zillow when they're looking for investment properties because that's the tool that they use when they're looking for their own personal residence. But, for lack of a better term, an amateur and a professional, or in this case a regular home buyer and a investor, do not use the same tools. And that's true of any industry. So think about photography. An amateur photographer, you or me, but I'm assuming you're not a professional photographer, an amateur photographer is not going to use the same tools that a professional photographer would. An amateur cook is not going to use the same tools that a professional chef would. An amateur driver, a person who just normally drives a car, is not going to use the same type of vehicle that a professional race car driver would. So in every industry, people who take photos for themselves, cook for themselves, drive cars for themselves, don't use the same tools that people who do this in order to make money use. And the same is true when you're looking for properties. So unfortunately, all across my blog, in like the comment stream of almost every article, there's always at least one person who's like, I spent like an hour on Zillow and I couldn't find anything. There's absolutely nothing good in my town. And I'm like, wow, really? You've spent an hour on Zillow. You don't even know what you're doing. Okay, so if Zillow, and I'm not picking on Zillow specifically, this is true of Redfin, Trulia, any of those public-facing websites. Those public-facing sites, most of them draw data from the MLS. The MLS stands for the Multiple Listing Service, and it is the platform that real estate agents and brokers use when they are listing properties that are for sale or for rent. And so all of these public-facing websites, Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, they pull data from the MLS, often 24 to 48 hours later after that data is listed. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a secondary MLS website that is designed to be consumer-facing. But, as you've said, that's where the vast majority of people are. That's where the competition is. And that is where retail buyers tend to hang out. Anytime that you are trying to buy something wholesale, you're not going to hang out in the same zones as people who want to buy something retail. So, what are some of the tactics that investors use when they're looking for properties? First, many investors look for properties that are in pre-foreclosure. So a little bit of background. If a homeowner defaults on their mortgage payments, then the lender can file a public default notice, which is known as a notice of default. And this alerts the borrower that there has been a breach of an agreement. And when the borrower receives this, they have a grace period in which they can reinstate their loan by paying off the outstanding overdue balance and getting caught up with their payments. So this grace period is known as pre-foreclosure. In most places, this is public data. And so many investors will look for properties that are in pre-foreclosure and contact those homeowners directly with an offer to buy that property because the homeowner doesn't want to get foreclosed on, but they may be underwater on their mortgage. Otherwise, they would have probably just tried to list it. So oftentimes, the homeowner might list the property for short sale, or the homeowner might get contacted by an investor who makes a private deal directly, kind of person to person. So doing that public record search, looking for pre-foreclosure properties, that is one of many ways that you can find good investment properties. Another option, so that's one option, right? You do the public record search, you look for pre-foreclosures. Another option is to form relationships with people who work with homeowners who are currently in pre-foreclosure. So, for example, real estate agents who specialize in short sales. That's another great source of leads. In order to find them, check out the Short Sale and Foreclosure Resource Directory, which is offered by the National Association of Realtors. That is an optional certification program that some real estate agents opt into. And so that's an indicator that those agents specialize in short sales and foreclosures, know what's on the area, and can often clue you into deals that are coming up, deals that have been under contract but that have just fallen out, things like that. So those direct relationships with short sale and foreclosure specialists, that's tactic number 2. Tactic number 3, auctions. So there are two kind of main categories of real estate auctions. There are voluntary auctions in which an owner or an owner's representative uses a public auction as a way to sell their own property. And then there are mandated auctions in which an outside third party that does not represent the owner's interests, typically either a bank or a municipality, claims the property as collateral against a debt and then puts that property up on auction, asking the court to force a sale. Court-mandated auctions are also known as trustee sales. So that's tactic number 3, is to look at different types of auctions in order to find those properties. And we can really go into the weeds with that because rules for tax lien auctions are set by the county that holds them, and that can be very different than foreclosure auctions like the kind that you would find on Hubzu or Bid for Homes or Auction.com. So we can really go into the weeds on those. But long story short, auctions are another great way to look for good investment properties. Another tactic, since your question is about tactics, is driving for dollars. And so driving for dollars is the action of picking a certain geographic area, such as a neighborhood or a zip code, and driving around and looking for indicators that an owner might be interested in selling their property. So, for example, if a home has a lot of deferred maintenance, such as overgrown lawns, clogged gutters, peeling paint, that type of deferred maintenance suggests that the homeowner may be in a financial bind. Maybe they're behind on their bills. Maybe they're just not interested in the property. They're going through some type of hardship. And maybe that homeowner assumes that they're not going to be able to sell their house due to all of those deferred maintenance issues. But that's where you come in, and that's where you can, again, have a direct conversation with the homeowner and offer to purchase their property. Now, that's tactic number, I've lost count, maybe 4, I think, 4 or 5. So tactic number, whatever count we are right now, is to buy properties from wholesalers. Now, I don't necessarily always recommend this, but wholesalers make their money by finding properties that would appeal to investors. And they get those properties under contract, and then they sell the right to complete that sale. They flip that contract to investors. And that can be a great resource. I mean, you're functionally paying that wholesaler a finder's fee for doing all of the legwork for you. And wholesalers, by definition, specialize in serving investors. Now, they typically tend to serve people who flip rather than buy and hold investors. Regardless, there are often overlapping circles in the Venn diagram for both of those. So that's another way to look for investment properties. Postcards are another really good tactic. Postcards are a tactic that wholesalers often use. It's kind of a funnel strategy, right? So you mail postcards, you cast a wide net to properties in a specific area. Maybe you send postcards to the owners of every multi-unit that is within walking distance to public transit that is also built before 1970 in a given zip code. and you send postcards to all of those owners, and then you continually follow up. It's kind of like email marketing, except it's snail mail marketing. That's another way that you can find investment properties. Buying properties directly from landlords and property managers. That's another way to do it. Call up a property management company. Let them know that you're interested in buying a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home in a particular zip code. You know that they represent a lot of houses in that zip code. If any of those owners are interested in selling the property, you would like to be first on their list. So forming those relationships with property management companies or with other landlords, that's another way that you can find investment properties. I'm going to cut myself off before this podcast stretches far too long, but long story short, those are all tactics that are much better than Zillow or Redfin or Trulia or any other website when it comes to finding a good investment property. You don't want to be looking at stuff that is positioned for retail buyers. You want to be looking at non-retail. If you're paying retail, oftentimes in most markets, you might be paying too much. Now, to the second half of your question, why would a person sell a property if it is a good deal? Could be for any number of reasons. I mean, a person might sell a property because they're 80 years old and they want to just retire and be done with everything. A person might sell a property because they're moving to a different country or a different continent. Maybe they're moving to South America because that's where the rest of their family lives. Maybe they just married somebody from China and they are moving to China to be with their new spouse. And they want to get rid of all of their physical assets in the United States before they do that. Maybe they inherited a property and they aren't interested in owning property. You know, that was something that their parents were into, but they themselves are not. So they want to get rid of it. So there are many reasons that a person might sell a property that don't necessarily involve, straight dollars and cents. There are many personal reasons why a person might sell a property. So don't let the fact that a property is for sale scare you off. There are many, many good multi-units and single-family homes that are owned by investors that are up for sale. Oh, and by the way, one other reason, particularly in the case of multi-units, it might be that the investor has just decided to trade up. Maybe they own 10 different duplexes and they've decided to sell all of those so that they can use that money to buy a 250-unit apartment complex. So if it's a successful investor, the reason that they may be selling might be that that property has done so well that they're now ready to level up into the next kind of order of magnitude. That could be a reason as well.
Hey, did you enjoy this excerpt from the Afford Anything podcast? Then click to download our free ebook, Escape. You'll be taken to a page where you can enter your email for immediate access to everything you need to know about escaping the 9-to-5 grind to live life on your terms. And you can also subscribe with one simple click to get alerted when new videos are uploaded.